In local museums and private collections in Malta, one can find artifacts which are related to the siege of Malta from the Second World War. Usually these artifacts are either parts of aircraft downed over Malta or unexploded ordnance that fell into the hands of collectors or the civilian population. However, it's very difficult to find aircrew equipment and gear that is related to downed pilots over Malta. The reason being is that because crash sites were of significant importance in terms of intelligence and also technology for the British in Malta, the crash sites themselves were usually very much protected, and armed forces would rush to the site to try and preserve the crash site intact. For this reason, I want to show today flight helmets which were used by the German aircrew and pilots operating over Malta. And I want to start off with a little bit of history. In the early 1930s, the Luftwaffe authorities wanted to develop a new kind of flight helmet which was fit for the modern aircraft with a closed cockpit. In particular, it was very important that the communications were improved and had the facility of having integrated earpieces and also microphone fitted within the same helmet. This would allow any aircrew on either a bomber or a fighter to just plug in one plug and to have access to all the communications required. The first model, the Model 100, was introduced in 1936. However, a few years later, in 1938, the Model 101 came into service. The Model 101, which was also available in a winter and a summer variant, had some improvements over the previous model which were of more practicality in nature. The Model 101 had some features which were much more practical and needed over its predecessors. In particular, the flying helmet, the 101 model, had adjustable straps to allow more comfortable wear of the oxygen mask. It also had a notch on the earpieces, which made it easier to secure the flight goggles in place, together with the back straps with snaps that would allow for goggles to pass through. The winter and summer flight helmets were in use throughout the war, with very little variances. The winter uniform, of course, with a woolen lining, it was meant for the harsher climates and also when operating at very high altitudes. The summer one, made of linen cloth and it was unlined, was meant more for the hotter seasons of Central Europe. However, by 1940, a so-called tropical version was introduced that had a simplified construction. It made away with the tightening strap beneath the chin, which was considered to be much more comfortable, and the top was also made out of a net or a mesh, which would improve the conditions of the pilot or the aircrew in the cockpit. Later during the war, some variations in the way oxygen masks are connected were featured, and also the improvement of the throat microphones were introduced, the earlier ones being the rounded models, whereas the later one, they had the Model 2, which was more in elliptical shape. However, in practicality, it was very much the same. When it comes to aircrew that use this kind of equipment, it was basically all the Axis forces which have bought airplanes from the German forces. So belligerents like the Italian Air Force, the Reggio Aeronautica, made specifically use of these aircrew, of these flight helmets, and on use on German aircraft. To close off, let's have a look at what a German Luftwaffe bomber aircrew would have worn during the siege of Malta in 1941 and in the summer months of 1941 and 1942. The most obvious part is the flight jacket, which was a coverall worn over the blue uniform, or also the tropical uniform, made from the same material of the flight helmet we've just discussed. For high altitude operations, the oxygen mask was of utmost importance. In this model here is the three-point model, which was introduced in 1939. Flare pistols were pretty much available for aircrew, just in case downed pilot needed rescue, or also used to communicate between aircraft as not to make use of the radio. Gloves or gauntlets made from leather were also used by aircrew. And in addition, there would also be the flight boots, which were fleeced, which were also part of the standard equipment of the German Luftwaffe aircrew.